called in
to Bucks and Brews, you might hear something
you can use.
like tips on your cash or tips on the suds.
You're gonna want to
The
use
smarts of these stuff.
because they know the brews.
And they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks.
So listen up, because shit's not funny.
And save yourself some
Beer money. Bucks
and brews.
Bucks and
Bucks
and
brews.
brews.
Bucks and Brews.
Welcome back to Bucks and Brews. Nick, you and I are both doing the same non-alcoholic thing tonight.
Yeah, man. As I said, it's not you guys, it's me.
Yeah, you're trying to lose some weight,
I am, yeah. I say
and that's going good.
it's going real well.
All
Like,
right.
I mean, adding food back and stuff like that is helping. Like, now I'm on. Everybody thinks it's weird, but now I'm on fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
right? Like, originally I couldn't have that, and so I am doing a zero sugar, but it's still my favorite flavor, like glacial cherry, or I do the blue, right? Because that's what you should be doing when you're doing Gatorade. Yeah, so I
Staying away from the carbs.
I say a couple of weeks I get to go carbs
Yep.
back, and I'll come back with a beer for you guys, don't worry.
I decided to go tea tonight because I'm wanting to keep all my wits about me.
So yeah, this is gonna. It's funny because you and I kind of talked, and I was like, I think this is gonna be a great episode for Mike,
Yeah.
because of how you and I view things
Oh yeah,
differently.
totally.
And then
I
we'll
love
get
it.
into that. Before we get into that, say, Mr. Mike, the eye candy. Thanks so much for joining us. What are you drinking, buddy?
Well, I mean, I will be the first to admit I'm drinking probably the second greatest beverage that gets drank on this show, second only to City of Lansing tap water when the professor joins us. The
Yeah.
City of Portage tap water.
Man,
Also in solidarity, I've similarly been, not quite to the extent that you have, but I've been doing some intermittent fasting things, so I'm trying to get a little healthier. So I'm already down a little over 8 pounds from the 2 weeks I've been on it.
congrats, my friend. That's
Oh.
huge.
I'm gonna say this.
Yeah.
We're joined again by the great Scott Bennett, and I'm hoping he's gonna save us.
Dude, we need an American bailout, right? Mike.
There.
That's a good sound.
Oh yeah.
My man.
Cheers, my friend.
What are you drinking, my friend?
From work because I was like, it's Bucks and Brews. I gotta have a beer. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
knew so I stopped and I got some, and I'm the only one. I can't believe
You're the
it.
only one this week, my
There was
friend.
always a possibility I would have, but literally over the weekend I donated. Let me use the right word. I sponsored Bucks and Brews everything that was in my fridge.
Yeah.
He did. Now it's sitting in my fridge.
Don't worry, it'll get drank. Just give me a little bit more time.
Yeah,
and
the sours will need to be for you, and the non-sours will need to be for
yeah.
your buddy next to you.
So this week
Yeah.
we're gonna take on one of my favorite subjects.
Breakonomics.
Why is it all Reagan's fucking fault? And I thought Scott was great to hop on for this episode
Yeah.
because he talks about Reagan quite a bit on TikTok and
Yep.
how it's Reagan's fault. And him and I have similar views. And I know, Nick, you do probably not have the same views that I do here.
Sure.
You wanted, before we get on Reagan,
Yeah.
you wanted to touch on New York versus Trump.
Yeah.
So-
right. I mean, so Donald Trump is now getting in trouble currently for overvaluing his property, well, his net worth, right?
Yep.
And in his net worth, he's overvalued his penthouse suite in New York by $200 million, and his Mar-a-Lago fucking resort, I don't even know what you'd call this thing, by $600 million, right? And so
Of course, that also loses money.
yeah, but that every golf course is supposed to lose money. I mean,
But he also undervalued it on his taxes.
it's taxes, right? So, but to me, it's the business isn't paying right for what it is. So, what I think is weird is that this bank, it says, hey, he went into banks and got them to lend money off of, $800 million worth of extra. And I don't know anything else above that he overvalued, but they said upwards of $2.2 billion of excess net worth he lied about. So I couldn't, the only two I know examples of is his penthouse and Mar-a-Lago, right? And to me, I'm just sitting here laughing as a real estate investor because, you know, if I go into a bank and tell them that my house in Wyoming, you know, one of them is worth $1 million, right? If it's a local person, they're gonna fucking laugh at me, right? There's nothing in Wyoming. Yeah, really. I mean, like any part of it, you know, you might get to 850 or whatever, like, you know, but it's just not gonna happen, right? And so, you know, hey, if the bank made the loan, that's on them for not doing their due diligence to underwrite this deal, right? So it sounded like he just made such a good relationship and they just gave him money.
Well, I mean, that's kind of his MO.
Right.
He, you know, people just throw money at him because he's Trump and he makes money, even though he's bankrupted 6 times.
I knew a 4. Is it 6 though? But like, right. And that's what I tell people this all the time. I'm like, look, when you have a name like Trump and who's created this, you could bankrupt. So his thing is he never is broke because he just borrows other people's money. And then if he loses their money, he doesn't feel like, you know, he doesn't care. He's out nothing. But if he makes the money, then he looks great, right?
Well, he also doesn't pay his contractors either, which helps.
Right. Well, and so, you know, and then he goes and fights him and it costs them more money to fight than it is. But the idea is so he just, now he turns around and he's like, hey, no, that guy screwed up the deal. He didn't keep up his end of the bargain. He can spill, and he's a salesman, right? He's gonna go be like, no, David screwed it up. That's why the $400 million deal didn't work out. It's not that I mean, gosh, I brought the deal and the numbers worked for me. Here, look at these numbers. Tell me these numbers shouldn't work. You know what? You should give me $200 million and we'll go do this different deal over here. Great, and it'll work for a little bit, and then, you know, when inflation goes up and they call a note, shit, now you're fucking broke. Like, this is what happened in the 2008-10 type thing, right? Like, banks called notes, interest rates were low back then, but I mean, you know, back in the day, interest rates got so high.
Yeah, but those teaser rates were expiring and they weren't going to be 1% anymore. The adjustable rate was going to go up and people didn't have that kind of money to pay. So they defaulted.
Well, and you look at, you know, and the problem is this is what America does. This is what I fight for so much. I mean, we have real estate episodes quite a bit, is don't go and get what the bank tells you can get, because you're going to be maxed out and your raises aren't going to equate, because you know just as much as I do that first year your taxes are going to go up. You know, sure, the first year you'll pay, your taxes go up, and then now you're behind, right? I mean, your $1,400 payment could end up being, I've heard $1,700 type of a thing, right? Just on taxes, because the person bought it in 1970, you bought it now, they bought it for $17,000, you bought it for $400,000. I mean, the tax couldn't catch up with it because the government's stuck on how much they can tax or how much they can raise property taxes per year. And you know, so I see this all the time, and then people are like, so that's how they get upside down. And then you get the teaser rate, which they offered, or an ARM, right? So hey, 5 years at 4% interest, which was fine during the little bit of time, but now the 5 years comes up, and if you had to go get it,
refinance right now,
8%. I just looked it up. It's because friends and I were talking about, it's 8.15 for a 30-year note right now, right? And if your payment doubled because of the interest, I mean, you're screwed. So, and we're going to see that happen in the commercial world, and that's what's happening. That's what I truthfully, like, I'm just going to call it out. That's what I'm waiting for, because I will then step in. You know, we had a guest last week that talked about it. 2019, they bought a $40 million property. He's now selling it for $39.5, right? $500,000 less than he bought, because the note came due with the 5-year and he wasn't making the money to make the new payment.
So I'm going to tee this up for our guest. Trump.
Yeah.
Scott, did he absolutely steal the Reagan playbook?
That's a good question. Well, you know, I think he's wholeheartedly embraced every Republican economic idea. even though for years leading up to his presidency, he would say things that, his own personal feelings about abortion or Clinton being a good president or things like that, very much, not in the orthodoxy. And when he was a candidate, Trump too, he would say things against NAFTA, or he would be against interventionist military policy, things that you would traditionally consider on the left. But once he became president, like all that stuff was out the window. And yeah, it was anything that the party wants was, he knew where his bread was buttered. So it was everything that way. But I think Trump and Reagan share a real flair for performance. I think that more than anything, I think they're both hollow when it comes to their true principles about economics or anything, and they were willing to be led by the smarter people. Well, I don't want to say smarter, but people who knew what they were doing with policy and had a real vision and agenda that Trump may not have shared, but was more than willing to buy into.
So one of the things I was looking at today, before Trump, who had the most corrupt government president-wise?
I'm going to assume Reagan.
Bingo.
Say, just,
but I mean, it took him 8 years what it took 4 years to do.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not mad at Trump for this whole lying about how much your shit's worth, right? I mean, I ask, I say, how much would you sell your car? Right? What do you value your car at, right? Oh, like me, if you ask me about my car, prime example, right? Yeah. I'm going to tell you, I would sell it for like $15,000. Okay. Mind you, Kelly Blue Book in the condition this fucking piece of shit is in, like
1,500.
Right. You know what I'm saying? And right. That's the whole thing. Like I have brand new tires on it, but really I value my car. Nobody else in this world, except for that other crazy person that loves a purple fucking toaster. And so no bank would ever give the loan on it. No, it'd be a cat. So for these banks to give Trump the thing, I don't give a shit. Like
they did it because of his name.
100%, right?
And you asked me the question because you thought I was going to take the other side on this, and my answer was twofold. One, it's worth as much as somebody's willing to pay for it. So if you ask me what my house is worth, I think it's worth about $220, but really it's worth whatever somebody's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right now in this market, it's probably worth closer to $300.
Let's say actually,
I think it's probably closer to $180, but again, it's worth what somebody's willing to pay. Yep. Two, is it Trump's fault? Not necessarily. It's the bank's fault for not verifying. It's the government's fault for not auditing him. Did he lie? Yeah, absolutely lied, but he lies. That's what he does.
Right.
So,
I mean, you say,
other thought, Trump's net worth. I read, I think it was David K. Johnston was writing articles about this like 10 years ago before Trump was president. And he was saying that Trump wasn't even worth $1 billion, that like his net worth, he called himself a billionaire, but if you actually went in and looked at his finances, it wasn't even close. Now, I don't know if that's changed since then. I mean, a lot's changed since then, but I think that's a really interesting point when we're, talking about overvaluing properties by hundreds of millions of dollars. What does the forensic analysis say about his actual net worth? Part of Trump's appeal has always been that I'm this brilliant businessman and I'm worth so much money. You guys mentioned all those bankruptcies. I mean,
yeah,
I don't
know. And that's the thing that kind of gets me is I tell people this all the time, right? They're like, oh, how much do you own? Whatever. Oh, and sure, there's an arrogance level when I find the right person. Yeah, cool. I'm a millionaire. But I also, having a normal conversation like this, I tell people, sure, I have a few $1 million net worth, but like I know that if the market crashes and goes away, I mean, I could be worth almost guaranteed like $500,000. Like, what I'm saying? Like, so I know that everything could just go, back to really, really low. And if I'd have to do the math, I don't know but let's say it's 2010 when I first started and everything went back to that price. It'd be I'd have one versus, 10 million or whatever the heck it might be, whatever, and so it Trump, sure, at one point, sure, you're worth, no, it's, you have $1 billion in real estate, that's last episode syndication. It's what I hate about syndicators, right? I own 400 units. No, the fuck you don't.
No.
You own 1% of 400 units, right? Like you're 1% of the deal. But these guys, they walk around and they go, "Oh yeah, I own 1,200 units." No. Your partner, your 1% partner on 12. So you own 12 units. Like again, it's not about bragging to me type thing. It's just, hey, okay. And that's what I tell people all the time in this real estate world. Like, so Trump, I mean, he doesn't own all of this stuff. Like, that's the thing that people need to understand, right? Trump is a syndicator in that type of a sense, where he gets a bunch of people's money, whether it's banks, whether it's people, they go build it. Trump Tower. Trump doesn't own Trump Tower. His name's on it because he's, built his name very well or not well, whatever. The people that support him do it. But there's so many partners in that. Like, he's shady enough. He probably owns 70-30, so he owns 30% or 70% of it type thing. But like, there's so many other people that are in this thing. And when he buys it, so just really, really quick to make this easy for people. If you're going to go buy a building, most common, quick. Let's say you're spending $1 million on a building. All you need to do is put $250,000 down, and now you have a building worth $1 million. And most people will go, "Oh yeah, I have $1 million building." Sure, you have the building, but you still owe $750,000. Nobody tells you what their debt is, right? And so when people ask me, "Oh, what do you have?" And like, I tell people, look, my debt to income currently, for my properties, I'm down to 32%, right? So I own 68% of my buildings. I still have debt on all of them. So, and again, out of that 25%, right? So if Trump is a 5% partner, sure, he owns 5% of it. And then, when the equity pays off, it'll be worth a shit ton. It just takes years to pay it off. So, just so that people know kind of how this really works is, no one person, and I mean, there's some, but like, no one person owns any buildings, because they always have money from somewhere else, that pooling big rich people money.
You're honest about the fact that you used to owe a lot of money on your houses. The difference with people like Trump is he makes you think and he's got people who are stupid enough to believe that he owns 100% of everything that has Trump Towers or any of,
and it's all paid for,
right? And that's why I hate syndicators. No disrespect, but again, they make you think that they own 1,200 units, and God, no, you don't.
Like, overinflating themselves
very much, right? And to me, it's humble. Like, I'm just this is what I own, right?
So, I own 20% of one unit.
There you go, right? So, all right. So Reagan, your favorite fucking president of all time.
All time.
God knows I wasn't around for this time frame.
You were around for a year.
A year.
Yeah.
Well,
you're born in 87.
88. So I was around for 3 months. So August, September, October, right? No, November. So
officially, you'd have to go into January. He doesn't officially stop being president until January.
Yeah. I say, yep. So 6 months. Good job.
Scott might know a little better.
He had 8 years of Bush as his VP, so really you dealt with 4 years of Bush just being a puppet of Reagan. Anyway,
really, truly, yes. It was like 12 long years.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, we can get into this. I still don't know how the fuck he beat Mondale so bad. Was Mondale really that bad? Because I don't really remember that election in 84.
Yes.
I actually wrote about that a little bit. I don't know if I've put it out yet, but during the campaign in 84, Mondale said, well, with all these deficits, Reagan is going to raise your taxes, but he's not going to tell you that he's going to raise your taxes. I'm going to tell you that I'm going to raise your taxes. And it was like the worst campaign strategy.
If that tells you anything, don't be honest in politics.
I want to be president so I can raise your taxes. And everybody's like, fuck that.
Yeah.
I learned something new that I never knew before.
Bush did the read my lips, no new taxes.
And he raised them too.
Yep.
No, I think the biggest thing, especially with Mondale, other than the fact that he was being honest, and you see it now that it's taken basically the better part of 20 years to do it, or no, 30 years to do it. He put Ferraro in there as his running mate.
Yeah.
And I don't think at that point the country was willing to have a female at that level of government. And like I said,
True.
it really took Biden to finally get that. And I think that only happened even in general because people like Clinton were willing to put, you know, Janet Reno and others in seats of power, and you know, Hillary Clinton ran a pretty well. She won the popular vote against Trump, just didn't win the electoral college, and
reasons to get rid of the electoral college.
And then with
move mine
right now, they were finally they're like, okay, we can have a woman. You know, we had an African American or half African American man as president. You know, we can move beyond everything being white males.
And
but the going into the 84 election, it wasn't like, oh, Reagan's a lock. It was kind of a question because he wasn't super popular during that first term.
No.
Well, you know, when you look at him, he was, again, Trump before Trump. He said a lot of lies and he just kept repeating them. And people kind of believed what he said. So one of the things I loved was he hammered Carter on having a $50 billion deficit.
Sure.
You want to know what Reagan's deficit was when he left office?
Oh, I'm going to guess real quick. Let's do it. I'm going to say
probably hit trillion.
150 billion?
200 billion.
200 billion.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
4 times the amount.
And the federal debt went from 738 billion to 1.2 trillion.
Oh, shit.
So he was great at spending money.
Yeah.
And he basically only spent it on the military.
And I mean, and we can sit there and say basically two things. I mean, really, in my opinion, Carter got elected because Ford was an absolute idiot.
Yeah, he pardoned Nixon.
Yeah. If that, he may not, and honestly, at that point, the world was so pissed off or the United States was so pissed off at Carter that's why Reagan got. I mean, literally, you're talking about a guy whose only role in politics was the head of the Screen Actors Guild.
Well, he was governor of California.
Well, governor of California, you're right. But even that. He wasn't a senator for several years. He wasn't, you know. Even then, I mean, Bush was literally, before he became vice president, just the director of the CIA or whatever.
He'd been a career-long, political flack in the party.
Yeah.
A whole number of jobs H.W. Bush did.
But he never really was like a senator for a long period of time, or a governor or whatever.
Right.
Let's say, and because right, I mean, Reaganomics, right? The idea of trickle down, right? It would work in theory.
It would work in theory if rich people were selfish.
It kind of it, right? So, I mean, we look at the union, right? The UAW of what's going on right now. The CEO gets a 40% increase in, what was it? Was it a year, or was it, it was just a very short period of time. And now the UAW is going, well, we want 40% over the next 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
To get us to this, because if you can afford for this, you should be able to afford it all. And that's one thing I fully agree upon. Like, hey, if this, I don't care if you make $1 million and now you're at 40% more, so you're making 1.4 million. And I, as the low man on the totem pole, am making 10,000 a year. Well, now I'm making 14,000, right? Like that 40% should go across the board in that sense of thing, right? I remember Gentex, right? I'm making, hey, for a while we're limited to like a quarter per every 6 months of like literally 25 cents, right, per hour, every 6 months, and then they raise it a little bit, but while the CEO who started it, which I give him full credit, is getting billions, but like more and more stock, more and more everything, and so it's kind of different for me.
Well, I think one of the things that pisses me off about the Reagan thing so much is conservatives hold him up as this beacon of fiscal conservativeness.
Yeah.
There was nothing fiscally conservative about Reagan. It was just a big bullshit story. And I mean, you can sit there and say, you know, trickle down in theory works, but you can also say communism in theory works.
It does. In
It's
theory,
the same fucking theory.
yeah.
So you give all the money to the rich people and then they pay all of the workers money, or everybody just gets paid the same.
Right.
Okay, you can take both of them. And if you have honest people that care about other people, sure, they work.
And that's the problem.
But you don't.
So that's what capitalism is ruined by, is the fact that people forget people, right?
And I think you can point a lot of that to Reagan, especially with the tax cuts for the rich.
Actually, so what we're talking about, we call it trickle down. We also call it supply side economics, and very much an intentional strategy after the oil crisis, recession, stagflation in the 70s. People were saying, well, what do we do? We've had 40 years of New Deal redistributive policies where workers are getting a big share of the pie, and that's not working anymore. And it wasn't really because of anything domestically. One of the big reasons that we were having all those troubles all of a sudden at that time was the post-World War II advantages that we'd had ever since World War II up to the 70s. We were the biggest world exporter, the biggest industrial base, and all of our international competitors by the 70s had kind of caught up. Germany, Japan, everybody was back online, rebuilt all those factories. And so we just weren't going to be able to get that massive share of the pie anymore. And so people who, economists like Milton Friedman, especially, the real brains behind supply side economics, in my opinion, was saying, well, what we need to do is go back to what we were doing before the New Deal, look back to the Gilded Age, the 1920s, and just like take it easy on the rich. We need to let the rich keep as much of their money as possible, because they'll invest that money, and then that will create massive growth, and we'll be able to sustain our growth like we had back in the 50s and 60s. We'll be able to get that back, it was insane to think that you could never recapture that level of growth because it was completely a historical fluke. But what they were saying is, let's return to the days when we took it easy on the rich as an intentional strategy for long-term growth. And that didn't happen. The rich definitely got richer, but the long-term growth, a lot of the ideas that the things they said that were going to happen because of that never materialized. And that, in all those same policies, are the reason we have massive inequality today, where you have CEOs that are making 1,000 times, what's the average for the top 350 companies is 377 times what their average salary worker is making. So there's 365 days a year. They're making more than the average worker's salary every day of the year.
Well, even you talk about they did that and they modeled it off the 20s, but did it really work in the 1920s? Because we all know what happened at the tail end of the 1920s.
Right. Well, it was the 1920s were an absolute heyday for the rich, and the rich are the ones who were behind. They're the ones behind the Republican Party, especially, and ones behind these economists saying, yeah, we should go back and take charge again and put these old policies back in place because we don't want to share with the workers anymore.
At that point, I mean, and we've talked about it, I think, in some of the ones where we've had, like, David Seawick and others on there. And, officially, 150-ish plus years ago, the Republicans were truly the party of the people. Like, they were the ones who really wanted slavery to be abolished. Like, they were really the party of the common man in the Democrat. And it was probably right around the time you're talking about, in the 20s or whatever, that it almost like flipped the switch. Probably post World War I.
I think you go back into the late 1800s. Actually, that was really when things were starting to shift, and the Republican Party was starting to see a lot of pushback because of their policies about Reconstruction and stuff, and realized, if we can get, they refocused back then onto a more pro-rich kind of mentality.
Yeah, and when we look at some of the things we're dealing with today, because Nick, you brought up the UAW.
Yeah.
So one of the first things Reagan did was fire all the air traffic controllers.
Of course.
Because they went on strike, and not legal for a government employee to go on strike.
Yep.
So he fired all of them and barred them from working for the government ever again, which once that happened, other companies were like, well, shit, he doesn't care about unions. Let's start busting them.
Yeah. And sorry, I was doing some quick research. The poverty line technically is $16,990 for one
right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you make $7.25, which is the minimum wage in 20 states, I don't know about everybody.
That's the federal minimum wage.
Yeah, I say. And that's $15,000, right?
Yeah.
And there's
minimum wage is below the poverty line.
Yeah, which is absolutely
when it was
insane.
created, it was intended to be a living wage.
Yeah, and so we talk about the difference in, you said 337 times more than the average worker is what the CEOs are making.
77. The CEOs of the top 350 companies make on average 377 times their average salary worker.
That is absolutely freaking insane. So I mean, on the minimum wage, right? So if you're only making, that's $5 million.
And again, when you and I talk about these things, you are always on the side of the rich person,
very much,
and not really looking at what that constitutes. Because if you sat there and said, oh, he's making $5 million, he's cool, he can pay everybody $7.25 an hour, you'd be like, that's bullshit. They should get more than $7.25 an hour. You can't live on that.
Say my issue is choice, right? So again, I think that you have the choice to go do this.
Okay, so
when you look at Walmart and how much negative is talked about them, and right, they are. So it's funny because I love the business of Walmart. Mm-hmm. I think they're pieces of shit, right? Mm-hmm. So again, which is why I have moral dilemmas and things, right? Because again, very fiscally conservative, also, right? Socially liberal, right? So I do generally care about people, and I care about this thing, but I mentally, right, I think people need to go make themselves better, right? And I know it doesn't happen overnight.
So I'm going to bring this up though.
Yeah.
Do you know much about Mississippi?
No,
I don't know shit either. I don't know what's in Mississippi. I don't know what kind of businesses they have.
There's a casino there.
But my guess is, and I'm sure they're one of the 7.25 minimum wage states.
Oh.
Looking at Mississippi, because I don't know what's there, and it's not like people talk about their great steel mills or,
sure.
I
have no idea really what their export would be.
Right. My thought is, majority of workers there probably have to work for minimum wage because there probably aren't jobs that are paying a hell of a lot more.
Sure.
And if you're going to keep that at $7.25 an hour, these people are going to stay poor forever.
Yep. But that's where people unionizing, to me, and I mean this in a unionizing way, and I'm not trying to stereotype in a sense, but Asian culture, right? I mean, they put 3 families in a house, and I get that it's uncomfortable for you and things, but then they're paying off this thing so quick. But I don't want to leave my family, and I get the whole daycare aspect of things, but take and move, right? If we wiped out Mississippi, they would learn, right? That's what unions are for, right? You will learn, you will pay. And trust me, I used to be so anti-union, right? So anti-union because the whole, hey, and it's happening right now. What I said is happening. So the UAW is down, and there's people, and these guys make $34 an hour roughly, I want to say, or something.
I think that's their average, yeah.
Yep. And there's guys that are getting paid 14 or 15
yep.
to go pass the picket line and go work. So we know that there's workers out there. There's people that are willing to go do this. And so my thing is like, hey, if the company's going to, but it doesn't show devotion to the person, right? And so holding these companies responsible for it, I mean, that's what you need to do, right? And you know, I where do you draw that line, right? As the government, they shouldn't step in, but companies should be forced to have their hands slapped in the sense of, hey, these workers, I mean, if you could fill jobs that quick, good for you. But by the time, I mean, if all of America got together, we said it about during COVID, right? With the whole nurse aspect. And then New York actually did it. I was fucking proud. I was like, all the nurses just walked out.
Yeah.
Good. Like nobody, and the problem is nurses of all people, right? That we know of, nurses have the biggest heart, right?
Yeah.
So they're dying inside while people are literally dying. And no, you come together and do this. So I think it's going to take a long process for America to realize, hey, you know what? I don't need this private fucking jet that's this big, or jets are going to have to come down in price so that CEO can still buy it. But you know, I don't care how much somebody gets paid, as long as everybody's making it.
Well, I mean, we're diverting a little because that's what we do. But you know, I look at a lot of Scott's TikToks.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things he talks about a lot on his TikToks is how is this issue that we have relatable to people?
Sure.
Because that's the disconnect in this country. People will say things, but they don't really know how it really relates to them. And then they pick up buzzwords, but they don't really know how those relate to them. And they don't really gain that understanding. And you've said it a million times. You're not real book smart.
Oh gosh, no.
You aren't real great at reading.
No.
But you know how to learn.
Very much.
So I think that even though there's a lot of bad with social media, there's a lot of good with it too. You know, you can sit there and listen to a 3-minute video from Scott and pick up a whole host of knowledge from this that helps you make a better informed decision when it comes to a job or voting for a politician or all of these other things.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let Scott talk now because I just talked about how great he is.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those kind words very much, David. And I think Nick and David, you both brought up unions, and that is so important, I think, in this discussion about inequality and people being able to make it. We're seeing a lot more union activity happening right now, and it's very exciting. And I think it's because Americans have been pushed up against the wall because we've had more than 40 years of union busting going on that started with the Reagan era, with that air traffic controller strike that you mentioned, David. Because I actually know a guy, one of my good friends, his dad was an air traffic controller fired by Reagan. It affected their whole family for decades. It's unions are really the only institution, I think, that allows working people to push back against the power of the rich. Because I think it's, and I kind of feel like Nick was alluding to this, not really wanting the government to get involved and say, you know, oh, you know, this is okay, that's not okay, and in questions of labor versus management or whatever. And that's why you have unions, because the actual workers there are the ones who are fighting for the things that affect them. And unions as an institution are, you know, this, it's the people, it's the actual workers standing up and saying, we're not going to be taken advantage of like this. You need to give us a bigger slice of the pie. And if you look at the 40 years before Reagan, there was massive union agitation during the Depression and during the war. And after the war, that was the peak union membership levels in America. And it was also the time that was called the golden age of capitalism in America, because workers were getting paid more, a larger slice of the pie than they'd ever gotten in history. And that was powering the entire American economy because lots of people had money in pocket to spend. And that consumer spending makes up 70% of our nation's economy. So when you put money in the hands of people, they spend it. And when we don't have money, we're stuck at home. I hear from commenters on my videos all the time, like, I don't have any money. All I can spend money is on groceries. I got nothing left over after groceries. And everything's going insane right now. All the prices are going up. Reflation, I think. It's these corporations are just profit taking. And unions are a really proven way in American history that workers can say, no, we're not gonna accept this. We're not gonna accept a $7.25 minimum wage. Nobody can live off of $15,000 a year.
Yeah, no, I mean, even in my low ass places, one thing you had kind of said in there was consumers spending is 70% of American economy, right? And Bush, I don't remember. So the stimulus that first came out or whatever was that.
I think the first stimulus we got was Bush. It was right around 2008 recession, I believe.
Yeah,
I believe
something like that. And so,
actually, it might have been a little before that. It might have been post 9/11, but I'd have to look it up.
So and now that a couple of them kind of come out, but there's usually a pay amount. So hey, if you make over $170,000, you don't get the stimulus. Because they know for a fact that the poor people are going to go spend it, and all the people with 170,000 or above are just going to put it in the bank and it's going to sit there. They wanted the money to go through the economy, so that's the whole thing. Is hey, if you pay more, these people are going to go do more, right? I mean, they're going to spend it. So
February 08.
Rich people. I'm not rich, right? I mean, I'm a saver. That's just what I do. I barely. I'm not anymore, I'm not the help to the economy, right? I want to be clear on that. I'm not out there financing the world. I'm not doing, but the normal average person, oh shit, that's what they do. I mean, that's why America's gotten to the way it is.
You're not, but you kind of are, Nick. I'm like, you're still going and doing vacations, you're going and buying your beer, you're going and getting,
but compared to other people,
stuff like that.
Compared to other people,
compared to other people,
a normal American, right?
A normal American is like what Scott said. They don't have anything left over after they buy groceries.
But they're financing it. I mean, right? America's in debt.
America's in debt because that's the only way to live.
Right. But well, you and I we talk budget and hope that, because there is way, it just sucks, right?
Okay, I'm a budgeting kid. Yeah. Okay. And I got $15,000 worth of medical debt.
Yeah. But look at Caitlin, right? I mean, she doesn't make great money, right?
She makes about $30,000 a year,
which is not great money. But she can make it
above the poverty level.
She's twice the poverty level.
But what I'm saying is she can make it. She's just not. I mean, and the times that she goes out and gets a stupid haircut, the haircut was great. The amount of money wasn't.
Don't take me there.
But all I'm saying, right? So she can't go do that type of stuff, right? And I pull a Caitlin every once in a while and go spend $3,000 on a vacation or something, right? But all I'm saying is I don't spend what normal people do.
I mean, you did go in the private room at Binny's to buy a bottle of whiskey.
I did, yeah. Say,
they wouldn't even let me in.
But this is again, I once in a blue moon, and that's what people do. Normal people will just go buy every day, right? So when I go to buy beer, it's granted Bud Light, but normally, hey, it's a once off type of a thing, where normal Americans, they're constant, right? I mean, my friends will say that my age friends, right? I mean, they're out every night or every day. They're still decorating their damn house. I change my wife changes the curtains twice now, but I know people that change their curtains all the freaking time, right? I'm not out doing this, right? I'm not spending. And, to me, I have the same kitchen table I've had since I married my wife. I know people that have gone through 3 of them.
We bought one in 23 years.
Right. But you see what I'm saying is I know people that are doing, but your spending is different as well. Yours is more Comic-Cons.
Yeah. I'm spending a shit ton to go see Mark Hamill, but I digress.
So everybody has their thing, mine is $15 at a bowling alley, once a week or whatever, so
let's talk about some unemployment numbers and
What was unemployment during Reagan?
So when Reagan started, 7.5%.
Yeah, high.
And it jumped to almost 11.
That's crazy.
And it averaged 7.5 for his entire presidency.
Never went down.
I mean, when he left office, it was 5 something, but the average over the 8 years was 7.5%.
Oh.
Jobs grew a whopping 2% under Reagan, which under Carter, they grew 3.1. So Carter created more jobs, even though you'll have conservatives that talk about how great Reagan was for jobs.
Yeah.
Median household income, this is one I love. It grew at 5.5%
under Reagan.
Okay. As opposed to 8.5% the 8 years leading up to Reagan.
Okay.
So, I mean, literally all of the economic numbers are worse. And we have that myth that's been told for the last 50 years.
Sure.
That Republican economies are the best economies.
No, we've proven that.
I mean, we have,
yeah.
But if you listen to like news stations, they'll still tell you that Republican economies are great. But there's no basis for that.
Well,
there's always
a big basis for it. It's literally the rich people are putting money in the pockets of the news media.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether it's your, fully conservative Fox News or even your CNN. There's still people with deep pockets at the top of CNN.
Yeah. So, Scott, what is your take on what's happening with Americans with jobs currently? I mean, do you see that we're going to have a downward trend in financial pay? Do you see that things are going to get rough? What do you think?
Boy, I'm not very good at predicting the future, but I would say that we are at a low ebb for American worker power. Like one of the reasons we're seeing unions come back now is because corporations have their boot right on the worker's neck, and the corporations just call the shots, and that's why so much money is going to stock buybacks, and everything is financial, and the stock market, and nothing. It's all businesses just aren't giving anything back to their workers because at this point they don't have to. One of the reasons is because union membership is so low. We are weaker as workers than we've been in decades, and it's time for that to hopefully swing back in the other direction. My hope is that the pendulum will start swinging back for a correction, because you just can't have all of the giant portions of the economic pie going to just a very few people. It's not good for the national economy. It's not good for the majority of Americans. It's even bad for business. Business would be better, as I indicated, if workers were paid more. Then people could go out and spend money, and that would help business too, and it would even help share prices. But this philosophy, this supply side philosophy, even though we're 40 years removed from Reagan, these policies have just calcified and solidified. And Reagan was, well, actually it was Jimmy Carter was the first one to cut taxes on the rich, but then Reagan did it even more and just slashed tax rates on the rich down to the lowest levels they had been in eons. And that's one of the reasons that things are so bad, is because we let rich people keep so much of the money. And then on top of that, on top of not taxing the rich, we borrow from them, because our federal deficit, whatever money we can't cover for federal spending, goes to, we sell treasury notes to cover that, right? So it becomes debt. So who buys that? The majority of that is domestic, and it's bought by rich people. So instead of taxing the rich, we're borrowing from them, and we're paying them interest on that money. So it's really out of whack, and the power balance is completely out of whack. The the people running these companies are just running roughshod over workers, and with cost of everything going up so high, and people can't make ends meet, and I know everybody's feeling the pinch. I just don't see how sustainable this is in the long term.
Yeah. Well, I would say in the long term, it's just not sustainable. I mean, there has to be some kind of change made, because people out there don't have enough money to do the things they want to do. I mean, you look at, I'm going to say kids nowadays. So basically younger millennials like my daughter and the older Gen Z that, is now graduated high school. They're all looking around going, I can't afford to buy a house ever. It's just never going to happen. I'll get a house when my parent dies, if they have one. And if not, I'll just never have a house, because that is such a foreign thought to them, because they don't have the money and they don't have a path to getting that money. We saddled millennials with huge student debt, because that's another. Go ahead, Scott.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, David.
No, go ahead.
I heard this recently. In California, Reagan, when he was governor, was one of the pioneers of, back when he was governor, going to in-school university at University of California or any of the California schools was free for if you were a California resident. And Reagan was one of the first to pioneer that the idea of saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to cut spending on higher learning, and we're going to raise tuition. And if you want to go to school, you're going to have to take out loans. So this whole idea of taking out massive loans to pay for school started with Reagan. Now, he wasn't the one who came up with the idea, and it's actually ideologically motivated, because people with money, smart people with money, were starting to say, maybe it's not good to have all these working class kids getting these really good college educations for free, because they're going to want more, a bigger slice of the pie, like we're talking about, after they've been educated. And so this was part of that idea is, okay, well, let's load them up with debt. And so now here we are, 50 years removed from that happening in California, and we see the results of that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's perfect. I mean, it's perfect.
I think that honestly leads into where we're sitting at today. So they basically corrupted higher education. And now you can see what's happening with school boards across the country, that they're corrupting now primary and secondary education, trying to, when we had Betsy DeVos as the education secretary, trying to push people towards charter or private institutions, which, again, this is to control information that's given to people, because we want obedient workers.
Yeah.
We don't want educated people making educated decisions.
Yep. And I just say, my wife and I fight about this all the time, because my wife is a worker, right? She likes her job, stuff like that, but she is a worker, right? And so she's the kind of person where I sit here and say, hey, we're going to go away for 2 weeks. And she's like, oh, your daughter can't be out of school that long. And she thinks it's, because she's not going to learn. And my kid will learn more, in my opinion, being on vacation with me, right? I mean, when we drive down the road, my daughter constantly, hey, ask me math questions, stuff like that. And so she works on it. But like, she reads, she does all this stuff. Yes, she's not learning in a normal way, but now she gets to see more of the world, right? And she gets to understand. And I tell her, I was like, look, school is so, if you look at school comparison to a job, they literally gear you from day one to be an employee, right? The school says, hey, you're only allowed 14 days of sick time. And then we have to contact your parents or whatever, and then you get 21 or whatever it is until we have to contact law enforcement or whatever it is, right? And you get this. And so they literally, like, they're setting you up for, hey, this is what you can get. This is, no more, no less. It starts at 8:15 or whatever the hell time, 8:30 in the morning. If you're late, you get a point. If you're late at work, you get a point, right? And a point leads to, a day off. And then, oh, well, we can kick you out of school for this type of a thing, And so, lunchtime is this time. It's for 30 minutes. This is what you get. They have such a structure where it's literally structured like a factory, right? You are a sheep that walks in.
And what are they teaching there? They're teaching memorization skills.
Oh,
they're not teaching critical thinking.
Yeah.
Right. Definitely not critical thinking. But another thing is following the rules and following authority. You got to listen to the teacher. You got to listen to the principal. Like you were saying, Nick, you got to show up on time. You got to do what you're told. That's a big part of the American educational system.
Oh, and to me, it's
6 and 7-year-olds true critical thinking. I mean, they just don't have the cognitive development at that point, regardless of what you might like. I fully agree there needs to be changes to it, but like we've had the conversation here before.
Yeah, but
these kids, learning about diversity, equity, and inclusion are not learning critical race theory.
Right.
They're literally learning just to be acceptant of other people around them.
But even in high school, we don't teach critical thinking. I mean, there is no critical thinking.
No, but at that point they could.
Right. But I'm not saying to teach it to
structure.
Nick's daughter, who's 8.
Right. But, and that's so I had a friend of mine, realtor who we were talking, and his dad was not a religious person. But his mom was, and he actually went to a Christian school, and he looked at his dad and he goes, and he's a really religious guy, and they were involved. And so he looked at his dad and he goes, why? And he goes, well, because I thought it was I think it's a better education. I thought it was a better education. I stand behind that, and that's great. And he goes, the difference is between us, he goes, when you send your kids to a Christian school, they forget, they think that the school is going to teach them about God, but their parents are out doing messed up shit and setting horrible examples because they figured that that's the school's responsibility, is to teach them that you learn by watching, you learn by doing. And so that to me is a huge thing. Hey, like these teachers, they don't get paid enough. I bless their heart for the crap they have to put up with.
Well, because they're getting paid worse than public school teachers are at.
Yeah. But say any teacher. And so I look at it and say, hey, lead by example, do this, these things need to happen. Right. My 8-year-old, she's not learning critically unless she's watching me, which, she catches on a lot. But, Scott, you had mentioned like, hey, you have to pay attention, respect your principal, or, listen to what these rules and this. And trust me, I already know I'm fighting, right? Like my mom, she the other day, my daughter had a little spaghetti strap on, and she's like, oh, no granddaughter of mine's gonna have, have her boob showing or whatever. And I was like, she's 8.
She's 8.
Like,
she doesn't have any boobs.
And never worry about my daughter's body. That shouldn't be your concern in any way, shape, or form. If my daughter's comfortable, she's confident, she's fine with it, I'm completely okay with this, right? Like, do not talk about that type of a thing. Like, don't body shame my kid.
Pull you aside.
Right, 100%. Hey,
I don't feel really comfortable with Emerson wearing that. And you go, that's great, Mom. Not your fucking problem.
Yep. And so, she made my daughter put a shirt on or whatever. And my daughter's taught, to respect. It's not to obey, but like I constantly have a fight with them. So I know that, going into school, if my daughter wants to wear something, oh yeah, Big Bad Nick's going to go in, and everybody knows I'm already building this with the principal. I've told the principal, I was like, hey, if you have somebody that you just really want to tell to go F off, or you want them hit in the face, I don't have a job, right? Like, right. I'm fine with going to jail for a day. I will gladly do this for you, right? And he thinks I'm joking in the sense, but like, if it's bad enough, let's fucking do this, right?
Well, and again, my teachers all loved me because I was a good kid.
You were quiet,
but they also hated me because I was extremely logical.
Yeah.
I've told you this story before. I took a math test when I was in first grade. I just wrote down the answers. I was done in 30 seconds. They called my mom. She came in. My mom looks at it and goes, what is this? That's my math test. Why didn't you do it? I know how to add. I know how to add. She knows I know how to add. Why do I have to do it?
Yeah. Let's say.
And it made perfect sense to me.
Yep.
And then, she related it to other things. She was a nurse. I know I can save that guy's life. You know I can save that guy's life. He knows I can save his life.
Yep.
Why do I have to do it? Okay, Mom, I get it.
Yeah.
But most kids aren't thinking that way. I was the exception to the rule.
Oh man, and you know, I actually just applied for a job. Sorry, quick tangent. I applied for a job in the high school that I went to, right? And one of the athletic directors, you know,
Knows you.
kind of, right? And so I was like, look, yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like I snuck out every day to go to Costco. And they're like, oh yeah, because I did it all 4 years, right? Because you're only supposed to leave as a senior. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like it's $1.50 for a hot dog, and I get to eat that day versus having to come here because my mom was too proud to get free or reduced lunch, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go eat for $1.50 versus having to pay your $4 and something cents here. Like, I'm gonna go do it, right? Plain and simple. You know, I've always been that rebel aspect because I've had to, right? And if I believe in something, I'm going to stand up for it. And I teach my daughter the exact same thing, right? But she also is taught to respect, right? You get told, hey, fine, you respect it, you do it, and we'll talk about it later, right? But like, if she snuck out every single day and got yelled at for the exact same thing because we were broke, I'd be like, wait, so she's spending $1 but not giving the school $3 extra? You're mad at her for this? Now, tell you what, I'll sign her out every single day, and she will officially be signed out. Well, then she'll have absences. You can't have an absent from lunch hour,
right?
Like that's not a possibility. So, also Granville
got an F in lunch.
Yeah, I say also the school I was at, I can't believe how many kids are door dashing.
Really?
Oh my gosh! Like, because I happened to be there right before this time. 25. I mean, there's kids ordering full pizzas. Like there is
showing up at
Panera bread.
Wow.
Like, I mean,
And,
I was
and
like,
my kids'
I was
schools
fucking broke
actually
as a high school
they
kid.
can't do delivery like they will not let people order like DoorDash or
Really
those things.
Oh,
Because but nowadays you've also got to look at it as you're letting these people on campus that they could just, I could literally just have a DoorDash bag that had a gun in it.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, we'll see. I never even thought about it that way. But yeah, I just was
fully understand
surprised.
why some schools, but I mean, I think those same school districts are also moving now to where free lunch or reduced lunch is for everybody.
Yeah,
not just for the people who apply. It's literally just like,
yeah, and I think it's great. My daughter gets free lunch because that's what our school. Yeah, everybody in the whole school, the whole district.
Yeah, they're moving to that in Michigan.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, like.
But then it helps. Like you said, your mom was too embarrassed to apply for it.
Yeah,
so you went off site to eat. But nowadays, a kid like you wouldn't have to do that. You'd get the same food that everybody else. You just may not have the ability to buy the extra like taco for $1. You don't.
I didn't even know they sold extras.
There's always extras that you can buy because that's why my kids are still like, we'll put something in there. And it might end up being things like, oh, I want to buy a candy bar, or I want to buy, an extra large soft drink or something like that.
3 giant bags of popcorn.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Scott, what is your opinion on what sorry, not opinion. What do you think is similar between Reagan and Trump and in the negative or the positive ways?
Well, okay. I don't know if it's a negative or positive, but I think there's a lot of stagecraft involved in both. Trump was the host of The Apprentice. Reagan was an actor in California and Hollywood for years and years. It reminds me, I came across this funny quote from James Garner. You remember him from Rockford Files. He wrote a memoir. It came out in 2011 or so. And he wrote about his time in the Screen Actors Guild. He was the vice president under Reagan, who was the president of the Screen Actors Guild. And I thought this was really funny. Ronald Reagan wasn't qualified to be governor, let alone president. I was vice president of the Screen Actors Guild when he was its president. My duties consisted of attending meetings and voting. The only thing I remember is that Ronnie never had an original thought and that we had to tell him what to say. that's no way to run a union, let alone a state or a country. So, I mean, I think in both cases, when you talk about the stagecraft, is that we have this image of presidents as being these take charge executives who make all these decisions, and that's Trump's stock and trade, right? Like he's the boss, and you're fired and all that. But I think when you're at that level, there are other voices that are helping guide the decision making process. And you talk about somebody like Reagan, who was an actor. Part of the mystique of the Reagan era is that he was this really friendly, nice man who could communicate. He was the great communicator. But I think there were people like Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney and these hardcore Republican movement guys who were really guiding him and moving the needle about the kind of policies. Because I don't think Reagan would have come up with the neoliberal agenda on his own to deregulate, slash taxes, privatize whatever public ownership they could. He's not the brains behind that operation. He's the friendly face that brings those pro-rich policies into the world, and people like him, so they don't realize that he's not.
Yeah, and I mean that's what actors in a lot of cases that's what actors are anyway. They're puppets to directors and producers and all that. So he was literally a puppet for all these people who really had an agenda.
That's kind of what I think. I think Trump is a little different. I mean, he really shoots from the hip, and he doesn't listen to anybody. He doesn't do his homework. He doesn't take the time to understand things, and he's impulsive and reckless. So I think Trump's maybe not so easily guided behind the scenes like Reagan might have been. There's a hilarious Saturday Night Live sketch with Phil Hartman playing Ronald Reagan, and he's like, he has a little kid come into the Oval Office, and he's like, "Oh, come here, Timmy, for a photo session." And then as soon as Timmy's gone, he's like, "All right, back to work. This Iran-Contra thing. What are we doing? We're selling these weapons to the Iranians. We're exchanging them for hostages." And, it was hilarious because it makes fun of this whole idea that Reagan was actually making all these important decisions behind the scenes. And it seems kind of ridiculous when you see it like that he was like really kicking ass behind the scenes. And I don't think he was. I think he was checked out. I think he was something that was suitable for that the public liked, that could be like the spoonful of sugar that would help all these really pro-rich policies go down. And I think we saw that a little bit with Trump as well. What's Trump's signature legislative achievement when he was president was this massive corporate tax cut that increased tax for the working class. So Trump is supposed to be this working class hero. He's supposed to be one of the great presidents who has this ability to connect with the American working class. And the one thing that he did when he was president was, stick it to them with the taxes. So,
well, and I think,
but officially he hasn't stuck it to them yet, because the tax breaks that they got along with that are about to end.
Right.
So they're really not sticking it to the workers until he would have been out of office or near out of office at the end of
a perfect design.
Anyway, yeah.
No, and that's exactly it, right? So like, I think that most Americans are oblivious to, because I remember when I was working, I remember when I was working, people are like, "Oh man, I have an extra $20 in my paycheck. I have an extra $20 in my paycheck." And I was like, yeah, but it's going to end, and Gentex will continue to get that $20. Like they're going to get 200 million every year. Yours, no, it's $20 in my paycheck. And I was like,
Yeah, they don't understand. They're
You,
just ignorant
you
to it.
really, you have no idea what's going on here. Like, sure, you're not going to pay that much in taxes for a very short period of time, but let me know when you're pissed off in a couple of years, right? But problem is America gets used to it, and then they're just like, this is what it is.
Well, and Scott said it was the perfect design.
100%.
It was set up so that when he was out of office, they could blame somebody else, which in turn right now is going to be Biden.
Oh yeah,
Biden did it. He raised my taxes.
Yep.
Scott brought up a great point. So he was talking about Reagan and how people see him.
Yep.
So I remember I took a vacation to DC in '87. And they had all this fucking Reagan merchandise around calling him Ronbo as a takeoff of Rambo.
Oh,
and literally, just like the Trump Stallone Rocky shit, they put fucking Reagan's head on Stallone's body as though he was fucking Rambo. Okay. And people laud him as this really tough guy on terrorism and other countries and shit. So let's just talk for a minute about all of the other countries he fucked up and the ways he fucked them up. So
nice transition.
Back to my notes. Scott brought up Iran-Contra, which we traded weapons for hostages.
Yep.
Because he was so hard on, the brown people.
Yeah.
He also sold weapons to Saddam. At the same time, he was sending weapons to Iran, and they were both fighting each other. So Iraq and Iran were fighting, and he was supplying both with weapons. He armed bin Laden with the freedom fighters in Afghanistan, which led to the creation of Al Qaeda. He attacked Grenada to help.
Grenada, literally a tiny little island.
Yeah, to help people think that he was tough on something. I think that war was 12 hours.
We give.
Is he also president during the Nicaragua thing where they just blasted Van Halen outside of Noriega's?
Well, he liked Noriega, and then he didn't.
Right. Noriega was a CIA, very friendly with the CIA before they decided they didn't want him anymore. Back during the hostage crisis, before Reagan was elected, I'm pretty sure that there's evidence that Reagan tried to make a deal with the Iranians. Well, he must have, because I think it was the day he was sworn in, the hostages were released, and it was like, and so Reagan could take credit for it. So they were actually kept there longer, purely.
It's flexible. So that's, I mean, and that it's funny because before Trump was president, I liked Trump, right? Because I loved the hell's that show he was on? You mentioned
Apprentice.
The Apprentice. I think it's a great show. But and it's funny because before I even know
show, like all 7 seasons it was on.
Yeah, which is fine.
So was every reality show in general.
Yeah, I say the business idea, like, as I love business, I strictly just do. But I even told people
business that he started that he put like somebody in charge of from that show, if any of them are actually still.
Oh, I doubt it.
And so, but I told people, I was like, look, never should an actor be portrayed as, or be in this government aspect unless you have government background. Arnold, I don't think should have done it. Jesse the Body Ventura, right? I don't even know what he, how good he did.
It's Jesse the Mind Ventura. Get it right.
Sure. But like, it just, to me, no, if you're in that industry, there's no possibility I'm going to trust
take
you.
them seriously.
Right? For me, 100%, right? Like, because I know that this is what you do, right? Like, you could be tough, you could be fake, you could be anything you want, because that's what media.
Yeah, that's what your job is.
Yep.
Literally pretending to be other people.
Yep. So, I'm not. I hate who he is as a person, but some of the things we talk about it. One of the things is the tariffs with China, right? And that's, I think we're finally feeling why things are more expensive, is because, right, Trump did it. He went in and raised the tariffs and said, hey, we need to make some more money, which I think is great. But now it did exactly what I said it's going to do, right?
Which is what every economist said it was going to do.
Right. Prices are going to go up, like, because China's
We're going to pay for it.
Yeah, China's not gonna not pay for it, right? Like, or the consumer's not gonna, and so hey, all right, this is exactly what we knew. Wages just didn't go up with it, right?
Well, and the worst part about Trump, Reagan, or any of them,
Yeah.
if you say something loudly enough and you're confident enough when you say it, people will buy your bullshit
for the most part.
And we have too many people that do their own research that wouldn't know research if it kicked them in the balls.
So speaking of that, because you and I watch or we send them back and forth. We a crap ton of the guy that interviews all these Trump supporters or whatever. And my favorites are the people that are like, I don't want my kid to go in and learn about this type of stuff and inappropriate things. And then it's the guy wearing the, jobs thing, it's like no jobs, whatever, and then blow jobs. And he's like, so you're okay if a kid reads this, and well, there's a chance of that, huh? And they laugh about it. And it's like, oh, or the respect women, blah blah blah, and you mean like that shirt? And so then these people are like, yeah. It's just like, holy crap, like how?
Yeah, and they have no presence of mind to realize that you're the butt of the joke, you fucking moron.
Yeah. So
that's again, I always go back to when I'm doing something, I want to come from an educated position. If I don't feel educated, I'm probably not going to say a lot because I don't want somebody to go, that guy's a fucking idiot. So I want to have some kind of knowledge about whatever I'm talking about before I open my mouth and stick my foot in it.
Well, so, as Scott said, Trump shoots from the hip, right? Like, hey, because he has the gift of gab, right? I mean, I don't have what he has, but I have, I have the same type of an aspect, right? Fake it till you make it kind of a thing. And Trump is fine with it because he has so many people that have his back, and it just blows my mind. I don't, I say you and I can agree that everybody here, right? Gretzky's the greatest hockey player, like, it just type of thing. Like we have a baseball episode, we talk about our greatest and stuff like that, but like, never do I idolize a person, right? Could be why I'm not religious, but I just, the idolizing of people is just so weird to me. I think, you gotta take more time and focus on your own fucking life. So, Scott, so David always has this one, or his wife always does it. Like, can you name anything good about Trump?
Trump or Reagan?
Well, Trump, and then I'll go to Reagan next.
Okay, we'll do Trump. I don't want to be glib.
All right, you have a good thing about Reagan? Say.
I'm not really a huge fan of either, but I don't think I would have a lot of nice things to say about any presidents except Lincoln, maybe.
Right.
Let's see. A good thing about Reagan. He could have cut taxes on the rich even more.
I mean, he definitely could have.
That's an easy way to go about that one. No, and but I think that we're in America, we're so far away that we forget that there is some things, right? Like, I personally enjoyed Obama, which was, it's surprising that I tell people this, right? Because I think what he did, and so I'm transitioning real quick because I watched something and Obama put Obamacare in, and I think it's, great that we're going to start getting towards cheaper insurance. Granted, insurance is just raising more and more money, but there's 28 million Americans still without insurance.
Because they can't afford it.
I had no idea. Still, that's insane to me.
So during the pandemic, of course, a lot of people were able to go on a lower, whether it was Medicaid or state sponsored, like in Michigan, it's Healthy Michigan, which was a very low cost Medicaid type coverage.
Sure.
And those mandates are ending. So if your insurance renews between now and when open enrollment comes for those plans, which is the beginning of the year.
Yep.
If you make, over a certain amount of money, you're just off. You got to find your own.
Real.
So like my daughter who makes, 30,000 a year, she hasn't had to pay anything for the last 3 years. Now she's going to have to go find insurance, and it's going to be a couple $100, and she's going to have copays, which she has not had the last 3 years. Chris, our employee here that does the Bucks and Brews theme song,
Yep,
has said adamantly he will not get insurance because he doesn't have the money for it. And I know what he makes.
Yeah, and I seen that. This bothers me, but
It does me too, but it is just so exponentially expensive when people are sitting there looking, going, all right, do I have enough money to pay my rent or mortgage?
Yep.
Do I have enough money to put gas in the car? Do I have enough money for the car? And do I have enough money to buy groceries? Healthcare is like 5 or 6 on the list. And they're like, all right, well, I don't have enough money for all that.
Yep, and people need to take care of themselves more.
I did think of something serious that I did like about Trump. You put me on the spot. I wasn't expecting that question, but I would say that he didn't start any new wars, which I really appreciate, because I think.
Does that surprise you though?
Well, I mean, that was one of the things when he was campaigning. He was very critical of American foreign policy, and that was one thing that he was actually consistent about. I was actually really excited when he first got elected and he was giving the CIA a hard time. That made me really excited, but they patched things up and he did whatever they wanted after that. But yeah, so I would say that is one big thing that I liked about Trump.
Sure. And truthfully, I think he started an internal civil war.
No, definitely.
But I say I am very surprised that a war didn't happen.
Well, I know he's very concerned right now about us getting into World War II.
Did he? Please tell me he said this.
He fucking said it.
Somebody has to send me.
If he does not get elected, Biden is going to get us into World War II.
Somebody send me this clip. Oh my gosh!
Again, he says stupid shit.
Again, probably the most uneducated person on this thing, right?
Yeah,
and
World War II happened.
Yes,
70 years ago.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but no, that's great. And so no, it really did. Because
Mike over there?
What's that? I'm sorry.
I think Mike's falling asleep.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
I
think so.
I'm looking at something on my phone.
Yeah, but it did surprise me that there wasn't one, right? To either help give an excuse for the economy or to raise it, right? And now I think the feds are doing a good enough job at tanking things right now, but that's my opinion. So,
I will say the Federal Reserve is fucking useless.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
They know nothing on how to control inflation other than raising interest rates. That's all they fucking know.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
again,
almost
a
like
lot of
before.
the inflation you can just trace back to corporate greed.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're making money hand over fist. They're just
Do it
screwing us all in the process.
Yeah.
All right. So now, when Reagan is throwing in all of these things, can you guys give me a reason of why half of his stuff didn't get voted back?
What do you mean? Like why they didn't
change it?
So a lot of that has to do with the structure of the government. So like he had deregulated. What the hell did he deregulate? I think it was the savings and loan that he deregulated.
Yep. That
Democrats tried to change that around the time Bush took office, and Republicans absolutely wouldn't listen to it.
Sure.
And again, politics was way different in the 80s and 90s than what it is today. Like back then, they all seemed to, even though they were on opposing sides, still try to work with each other to do things. And now it's just turned into a fucking football game.
Oh,
these
politicians are getting paid way too much to get nothing done.
Well, in all honesty, again, you and I are big. There should be term limits on fucking everything. Pelosi's running again. Why?
No.
She's not doing it to protect a Democratic seat in the House, because they could literally put up a dead body and it's going to win the Democratic now,
Yeah.
seat.
Say.
But She just wants to go. She's 80 some odd years old. Feinstein
Mhm.
is basically a walking corpse.
Yeah.
Again, Scott brought up the fact that Garner said, you just had to tell Reagan what to say because he didn't know what the fuck to say. That's literally where Dianne Feinstein is. She doesn't know what the fuck's going on, so they're just telling her how to vote.
Oh, McConnell, same way.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, yeah, I that was one of my biggest letdowns of Donald Trump, right? One of the biggest things he stood up and said was, "Hey, this is what we're gonna go do," and never did it, right? So
Yeah, but again, he wants, if he gets in there, he's basically going to appoint himself leader for life.
Oh, 100%, right? But we have term limits on so much except for that type, and
we have them at state levels,
yeah,
but we don't have them at the federal level.
No.
So you can be a senator for 50 years,
if not more.
And again,
but I do
You get Supreme Court judges at the state level aren't appointed for life.
no, but they are in the federal.
Yeah, so in federal, and sure, 9 is fine, right? Am I happy with the 9 we have? No, you and I both know I absolutely can't stand Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
I just royal.
The last 3
piece.
that were appointed were dog shit.
Well, and it was unlucky and unfortunate on the timing that it happened, but I see it getting much worse.
Oh, 100%.
But
again, even when we look at the Go ahead.
Mathematically, they'll sit there and say like, "Oh, the Democrats just want to up the Supreme Court," but you literally have to up the Supreme Court by 4 people and have them all come in as Democrats for the Democrats to take a majority. Even putting in 2 and giving them both to the Democrats doesn't give the Democrats a majority. You're literally talking about a near 50% increase in the size of the Supreme Court for Democrats to take a majority lead in there.
So Scott, what's your take on, I mean, I guess, if Reaganomics is so bad and all that, why hasn't it been completely overturned?
Well, I think despite all of the theatrics that the Democratic Party performs, they also are very dependent on rich people for a lot of their campaign financing. And so you talk about 2 big interest groups. I mean, we always say that rich people love the Republican Party, but Silicon Valley and the banks are all in with the Democrats, or they have been ever since Obama or so. So that those are 2 very rich constituencies that Democrats do not want to alienate. People have been talking, there's this carried interest loophole that allows hedge fund managers to pay they pay like a 15% tax rate or something ridiculously low, that even people who make $20,000 have to pay a higher tax rate than these hedge fund managers who make $1 billion a year managing these hedge funds. And
really?
They've been talking this carried interest loophole, closing it since before Obama. I remember Obama talked about it. He didn't close it. Trump didn't close it. Biden hasn't closed it. They all talk about closing it, but they're not going to because they're all dependent on those people. There's an incredibly small group of people, very rich people, that are responsible for a huge proportion of all the campaign spending that both sides depend on to keep them in power. So, and
what bothers me
on the rich a little, Clinton did as well, and then George W. Bush went and cut him again. So, it fluctuates a little, but overall, you're not going to get back to those high tax rates that you had pre-Reagan. You're not going to re-regulate after 40 years of deregulation or re-privatize if you just are depending on either the Democrats or the Republicans to do it.
Sure. I was looking up, we have a rich couple here, I guess, right? Land & Co. owns, I don't know, like 14,000 units here in Michigan. And then I was looking it up, and Terry Lynn Land was Secretary of State, and then she became something else.
Yeah.
But her husband got got penalized because he donated too much money to her campaign, right? Which is, but it's funny to me that you know, so it's kind of like the is it the NFL cap where then you get, or no, it's baseball,
Baseball,
right? Baseball. So you go over the maximum cap for this
luxury tax,
and then it's just a luxury tax. So basically, hey, you know what? I'm going to pay you $5 million, which is $3 million over what the heck you're allotted. But that $5 million is then going to cost me 550, and I'm just going to write off the extra 50 million, you know, or you know, sorry, yeah, right. And so you just write it all the extra. It's not like it actually like takes the person out. They don't get any real repercussions except for more money. So when you're hitting a rich person, you don't think they've calculated how much that tax is going to cost, just like in baseball. Well, shit, I'm already here. Luxury tax. I'm already there. Let's just blow it.
The story you told about Cuban.
Yeah.
Saying the F word on TV.
Oh.
Well, we're going to find you this. He's like, all right, fuck it. Let's do some more.
35,000, right? So have you seen that, Scott?
No.
It's one of my favorites. So like Mark Cuban, I think it's just great. But he's doing a nerd conference or something like that. And the interviewer walks up and goes, hey, just to let you know, Mark, that we're gonna have to fine you $35,000 for dropping the F-bomb on national TV. And he goes, oh, okay. Is that it? And she goes, why? Do you want to do it again? He goes, ah, fuck it. So he just drops like 70K. You know, he doesn't care. Yeah. It's just money. Like, it's just when you're worth billions of dollars, what is $70,000?
Yeah.
Right. I talk about this with police all the time, right? A speeding ticket. No, I'm not trying to brag about it, but the $100 fine, it didn't teach me a damn lesson, right? I'll write you the $100, get off my back, like call it a day. To a poor person, right? I mean, that $100, yeah, they're not going to. So that if the common person is going to be affected by it, yeah, it's good enough. Again, if you ever want to see what arrogance looks like, go watch Super Speeders. I'll give them a huge shout out. I freaking think it's hilarious. They're coming through Michigan, and the guy, you know, they're racing across the country or type thing, and so the one guy gets they start out a challenge. First one to get a ticket wins, right? And they have a pot for this, and so he gets pulled over doing like 88 miles an hour, and he's like, oh, hashi do hashi, that's Japanese for 88. And but then he just hands out, he's like, oh yeah, $100 for bail money, see ya. And then he goes, hey, can you write faster? That guy that just passed me, I have to go beat him. And he's like, what? So cop takes forever, and then he just fucking takes off again because they don't care, right? Like, plain and simple, this money does not affect these guys, right? The little bits of fines, your $500 or whatever. Now, I mean, we're talking big money. Then, you know, if fines were written as, hey, what's your net worth, and we'll fine you 10%, I guarantee you wouldn't have speeding, would you? You know?
Well, and you know, not to switch off of that, but
yeah,
to switch off of that for a second, you know, you brought up term limits. Scott talked about you're never going to get anything because it's Democrats and Republicans. The only way to make this better, the only way to fix this is to burn everything to the fucking ground and start over.
The moon.
Well, I'm saying, and that'll never happen.
It'll never happen.
Right.
But that's the only way.
People of this country are fed up. I think on a fundamental level, a lot of people are really sick of how unrepresented the majority is in this country, about how trod upon the working class is. How we're all just getting, you know, the shitty end of the stick all the time, and billionaires get everything. And, you know, there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And as bad as our system is, there are still democratic elements. It's still possible to actually, you know, get in there and change things if we unify. But that's part of the problem is you know, so much of this discussion has been Democrats, Republicans, Democrats, Republicans. It's just a nice way built into our system to cut the working class right in half. And, you know, it's your side, my side. And then they just do even more from there, you know, and then you get into minorities and immigrants, and, you know, there's just more subdividing and cutting and chopping of people who are just like all of us, just trying to make a living and just barely scraping by. And meanwhile, there's this very, very tiny subset of people that are just living in fabulous opulence. It's just, you know, it's like ancient Rome or ancient Egypt. I mean, you don't have to look very hard in history to see a lot of analogs to what's going on now. And it's just, You can't sustain that forever. And you talk about burning it down. I am all about rewriting the Constitution and make it so that all those built-in advantages that the rich have that were cooked in there from the very beginning by our founders, take that stuff out.
Totally agree.
You know, you had kind of mentioned, hey, you know, there's Democrats, Republicans, and then there's fights in between that. I live in the most conservative area, right? In Michigan, I believe, right? Like, I mean, it's just
It's one of them,
right? And we have some Democrats that fight, but like, here's the problem: is all the Republicans are literally going to vote this person, right? Trump, right? Like, and so then
they just care if there's an R next to it.
Our problem is on the Democratic side, we had chances to take so much. The problem is the Democrats couldn't pick. So we had more Democratic votes. I will tell you this, right? We had more Democratic votes. So let's just say this person got 10,000 and each of the three that were running against for the Republican got 10,000. Each of the Democrats, they all got around 4,000 apiece, right? So 12,000 Democratic voters showed up, but these people can't get behind one to make that one be the victor, right?
The big problem with the Democratic Party is their messaging and their execution. Okay, I guess that's two problems, but their messaging is god fucking awful, and their execution is 10 times worse. You know, you have people that, we're going to take minorities, for example. You've ignored the minorities for so long and taken their votes for granted that now you actually have minorities that are voting for Republicans, which is, in a lot of times, against their best interests, you know, and they're just so fed up, they're not voting for you anymore because you just don't fucking do anything for them.
Right.
You say you're going to, but then you don't. I mean, how the fuck long have they been supposedly going to get a Voting Rights Act? Yeah, we can't do that. Who's that going to help? That's going to help minorities. You know, it doesn't help a white person.
Right.
White people have no problem voting. I'm only half white. I have no problem voting.
Yep.
Nobody's questioned me for one fucking thing.
Nope.
But you're not serving these people's needs, so they're going to end up going somewhere else. And again, does any sane person want Biden to run again? Probably not, because he's 90 years old. But it's what it is. So you got two options here. You can vote for the 90-year-old who's not a fucking asshole, or you can vote for the 80-year-old who is a fucking asshole. You don't have much option here.
Yep.
I think they were almost the same age.
Yeah, I think they're within a couple of years of each other.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, both options are god fucking awful.
Well, and
same thing for the last. I mean, even when Trump went against Hillary, was Hillary a great option? No. But
and
yeah,
I think right now, I mean,
what you considered the worst of two evils. The only difference there is we, as people who voted for Biden, don't worship the ground Biden walks on, like the 20-ish% of the population who literally believes Trump is the second coming of the Messiah.
Yeah.
Whatever Messiah you believe in.
Say, no, and it surprises me. It surprises me so much how people.
It doesn't me.
But again, I wasn't around for this Reagan. And people were idolizing this guy like crazy. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, not even to that extent. Like, they just thought he was a good change of pace from some of the other politicians before him.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott.
Re-engineering of the narrative since 1988, since he left office. There's been a lot of glorification of Reagan that if you ask people in 1988 if they felt that way, they'd be like, no.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of rose-colored glasses. They look at Reagan now as this great president, but in the 10 years post-Reagan, they didn't look at him that way. He was not nearly as popular as he's become now. Like, they think, again, he's the poster boy for conservative values. He wasn't. A lot of times, to me, he was very similar to Bush, not his dad, not Herbert Walker, but George W.
Yep.
In the fact that, Bush was the president, But Cheney was pulling all the strings.
Sure.
Reagan was the president, but other people were pulling all those strings.
So, now, I like your guys' answer about, hey, why it's not going back, right? What are some of the things that you guys would like to see changed going forward? We did talk about, you and I agree upon term limits. But Scott, I guess I want to ask, like, what is some things that you'd like to see changed going on that America could step in on?
Well, we talked unions earlier. I think, it's really nice that Biden went to the UAW picket and that he changed that rule at the NLRB that makes it so that companies have to bargain with these new unions and stuff. So those things are great, but we need so much more. There's a great book I read called "Which Side Are You On?" and it's all about unions. And he talks about it's written by a union lawyer, a labor lawyer based out of Chicago here. His name's Thomas Gagan, and he says that people always ask him, well, why can't unions do what they did back in the 1930s, the sit down strikes and all that stuff that they did to really explode union strength? And he says that everything that they did back then is illegal now. So there are laws that could be passed to make it easier to form a union, for a union to be recognized. So many. I mean, you go back to, is it the LaGuardia Act? There was one at the end of the 40s that just decimated union strength. I mean, you could repeal that. I'm blanking on the name at the moment, which I'm kicking myself, but there are so many things that could be done to improve the position of workers if we just let unions do things that are illegal now, because of not just 40 years of union busting, but for 80 years of anti-union laws being passed to hamstring labor and hamstring workers. But there's so much else I would like to change. I mean, if we could abolish the Senate, because the Senate is nothing but a cadre of interests that are designed by our Constitution to basically say no to anything that's popular that could potentially help the mass public. So, like, there are so many big things, big changes that could be made, and small changes that need to happen that would really help people. But our whole government is not really geared towards that. Our government is really geared towards what John Jay said: the people who own this country ought to rule it, ought to govern it. A lot of people, that's like a core principle of our entire government. And we need to not just recognize that as a fact of life, because there's a lot of reshaping of the narrative, a lot of glorification of the framers of the Constitution and our past presidents like Reagan, where we build them up as these heroic proportions, and don't recognize all the things they've done to tilt the scales and in favor of the wealthy class at our expense. And so if there's one thing that we can do moving forward, it's educate one another, it's organize with one another, and hopefully start to change things together to find common ground as working people, and realize that our government does not necessarily have our best interests at heart. And if you recognize that, then you don't really have to play this game where we hope that this president or that president will finally break and do something in our favor.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. So, when we look at like the Trump supporters that we watch videos on, and you realize that they're not real intelligent and they basically just believe a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
That makes up, let's say, 20% of his base. Okay. And I don't think that it's quite as big on the other side, but maybe I'm naive. I could be ignorant to that. I don't know. I think a majority of the people are more like me and you. You tend to lean right. I definitely lean left. We can have an educated conversation about things and come to an understanding of where we both are, because we're willing to listen to the other person's point of view. You don't get a whole lot of that in American politics today, and I can't speak for other countries because I'm not there, but because everything here is based on emotion and angering people. You know, Fox News is a great example. They pump it into every army base, every Navy vessel, and all it does is, you know, create more right-wing talking points that may or may not be relevant. You know, you look at a lot of these things. We brought up the fact before of critical race theory. How many people out there believe this is actually taught in school? It's a college level law class. It's not fucking taught in school. Having empathy for, you know, an African American person because their life's been harder than an average white person isn't critical race theory. It's just being a decent fucking human being. You know, you can sit there and say, you know what, there are a lot of people of minorities that had a better life than I did growing up because your life wasn't great growing up.
Sure.
You lived in a very poor area. You didn't have advantages that, you know, I had for fucking sure. And, you know, those are things that not everybody can relate to.
Right.
Whereas you and I know where we're coming from. We can have those conversations, and we need more people willing to be open-minded.
So, you know, one of the other questions, you know, that kind of hit me was, you know, we talk about voting. I don't even know the percentage number, so I don't want to sound like an idiot, but you know, it's a low turnout, right? We constantly
More people don't vote than do vote.
Right. So what do you think that if we actually fixed this, right, to what 24 hours to vote, a weekend, you know, what do you think would help fix this, and do you think people would actually show the fuck up?
We'll go to Scott first.
I think those are all great options. I think we need to get as many people to vote as possibly can, but we also need candidates that are actually
worth voting for.
Yeah, worth anything. And this current system we have where you know, you have all these corporate sponsored candidates who you know, whose lives depend on their ability to raise money from extremely rich people. It's a bad system, and having all this money in the system is bad. And what I really think is we need a new working class party to really represent the people, because I don't think either party does a good job at that. I don't think voting blue will get that. It's just in my entire life of seeing what the Democrats are capable of when they're in power, they don't fight for the things that the working class needs because they're too scared of losing their big money donors. So, you know, it's more than just election day. There's so much more that needs to change.
I think you can even look at like Great Britain as a whole, like when, what was it, early to mid 1800s, when the House of Commons became, you know, the more powerful area in Parliament. And it's not like the House of Commons now is the House of the Common People. It's literally like our representatives and senators. It's literally just a whole lot of money still making the decision. It just happened to be at the front end of the Industrial Revolution. They gained enough power to flip, but now they're still where we're at. And I think it's just, and I mean, we talk a lot about education and stuff like that. I mean, like, I've always been like, people have the ability to research and learn whatever they want. So I don't like calling them uneducated. Uneducated almost means like you don't even have the option for it. I always call it undereducated because people aren't taking the time to learn sometimes what they need to learn to make an informed decision.
Well, I think one of the things Pennsylvania is doing is great because they're registering people.
Mm-hmm.
And Republicans are against that. And I heard a quote the other day. Somebody had said to somebody, upper in the Republican Party, let's say 20 years ago, wouldn't it be great if everybody voted? And his answer was no. The more people that vote, the less chance we have to win.
I think you saw that in my post.
I think I did see that in Scott's post. I know I saw it somewhere. Scott, you can do better justice than me. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was a Republican, I forget his name, Paul something or other, but yeah, the Republican Party knows that the more people who vote, the harder it is for them to stay in power. So that's one of the main reasons we see so much of this canard about voter fraud, where we need to stop people from voting more than once and doing all this voter fraud. But voter fraud, in-person voter fraud, almost never happens. It's like 33 cases out of 1 billion, I think, is what one study said. It's an incredibly inefficient way to try to throw an election. Imagine if I tried to do that. I was gonna go on a voting spree, and I was gonna, on election day, just vote as many times as I could. How many times was I gonna do that? Like 6, 12? Like, that's not enough to throw an election. And every time you do that, you're risking a $5,000 fine and like a year in prison or something. So totally inefficient. It's just all this stuff about voter fraud is a way of suppressing the vote. That's
you look at everything with the election in 2020, everything that's come out of it that's been like miscounts have always been miscounts on the part of the Republicans. Like, it's not Biden and his supporters who are getting in jail for getting in trouble for trying to,
rig the election
more votes their way. It's literally Trump and his supporters who are like being like, oh yeah, there's these extra 1,000 votes, but guess what? These extra 1,000 votes were just for the Democrats would have just won that seat by 1,000 more votes.
So of eligible voters in the 18 and 22, or sorry, 66% of eligible voters actually showed up. So, but we don't know how many uneligible ones are still out there, right? So, but I mean, that's a pretty decent turnout to me.
Well, what I read a minute ago was in the 2020 presidential election, 80 million people didn't vote. 80 million did not vote.
Okay, so yeah, because I have 158 million.
Well, and you're the two midterms. You're not looking at because you did 22 and 18.
I did. Yes, I voter turnout for elections, but yeah, I'm actually quite surprised. But I say we take off. To me, voting is an amazing right. That comes back to my Republican side, which is kind of like, I love my vote to write, or my right to vote. Jeez.
Yeah, but that's not really your Republican side.
I say my constitutional right aspect of things. So, I have never missed a vote since the day I was 18. Right. I am very much, hey, this is, and it's funny because we talk about it on air sometimes. My wife and I cancel each other out.
Yep.
But the fact is we're both, doing it type thing, and, but, to me, I don't understand why we could take Christmas, everybody's, except for a gas station is shut down. Why can we shut America down for so many things, except for one of the most popular one of the most important things that are out there, and we can't guarantee that companies have to let these people vote. They have to. Like, why is this?
The majority of politicians do not want you to vote.
Right, I get it,
because they want to stay in power.
But this needs
to. If everybody voted, that would probably be enough to bring a third party into power.
Why were they so worried about the mail-in vote in 2020?
Oh man, because they knew it was going to happen.
They knew it was going to happen, and they knew it was going to happen for a Democrat.
Yeah.
He told people you had to show up in person. So the Republicans were going to show up in person. And then, we saw the early returns. Trump was up, and he was up a good amount. And then overnight, when the mail-in vote started coming in, everybody's like, oh, well, this is why they're cheating. Look at all these votes they found. No, the votes were there. But people like me, I wasn't.
You were out of the country.
No, I wasn't.
Oh no.
No, I was still here. But I vote in Plainwell in Cooper Township, even though I don't live there. That's my permanent address.
Yeah.
So I have to drive 40 minutes to vote. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to do an absentee. And we have that right in Michigan to do an absentee for any fucking reason.
Yep.
My daughter does an absentee because she wants to understand her choices and she doesn't feel like she can walk into the ballot box and understand what she's looking at on the spot.
Yeah.
So she does an absentee. When you give people access to that, the amount of people that will vote for a Republican just exponentially goes down.
Yeah. I just think it's something that needs to change, right? I mean,
it absolutely does. But there's no money in it.
What do you guys think about this electoral vote?
I think the electoral college sucks. I think it's there to keep certain people in power.
Yeah.
So, Scott, what do
Electoral
you?
college was more meaningful, I think, at the point in time when the government started. So one gigantic New York was probably still one of the most populous states when the country first, ratified the Constitution. And that kept them from basically controlling the entire country.
Scott?
This is a misnomer that people say a lot, is that if every vote counted the same, then LA and New York would make all the decisions for us. And it's just not true, because if every vote counted equally, every vote in Idaho would count just as much as every New Yorker and Californian's vote. Instead of now, Wyoming in a presidential contest, their votes are worth 3.5 times what a person living in California is worth. Yeah. So it's really fair. It's baked right in there into the Constitution with the Electoral College, where some of these rural states are worth way more than they should be. I mean, a person, just because you live in Wyoming, your vote shouldn't be 3.5 times more powerful than mine or anybody else's. It's just unfair. Every vote should be the same. And if every vote's the same, then just because you have 40 million people living in California doesn't mean that California gets to choose anything. It means that, that's 40 million out of 350 million. Mm-hmm. And don't forget that there are plenty of there's more Republicans living in California than any other state. So, you never know what's going to happen.
Well, the conservatives love to show the map of, what states are red versus what states are blue, because more states are red than blue.
Yep.
So they try to pretend that means there's more Republicans in this country than Democrats. And again, I'm not a Democrat, but I kind of have to vote that way. So the new map I see coming out all the time basically shows it by population. And 60-ish% of the country is blue, because that's where the fucking people live.
Yeah.
15 people live in Wyoming.
I think you're giving it a little credit.
So I don't really give a shit what Wyoming thinks. They're not any more important than 15 people somewhere else.
Yep.
But they kind of get that advantage because, they get, 5 or 10 electoral votes or whatever the hell it ends up being. It's not 10.
No, I say, and
I could sit and talk electoral change all night long, but my wife just got home and I am hungry for supper.
All right, my friend. Real quick, something we're trying. What's your greatest advice, whether it's in political, whether it's anything, your greatest advice you can give people in this world?
Greatest advice I could give people in this world is look within yourself and find the truest essence of who you are, and learn how to trust that part of you and believe in that part of you. That, I have a certain essence that is Scott, and it doesn't matter what anybody else says. They can't, they don't have an impact on the essence of me. I don't know. This is all sounding very woo-woo, but I say, learn who you are on the inside and trust it and lean into it, and don't let others keep you from being yourself.
That's great advice.
I think it's awesome advice.
If you're gonna ask that around, I'm just gonna be like, that right there ended with a mic drop, and we all just need to like walk away.
So as always, guys, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your family. Big shout out to Gatorade and Sparkling Ice. We'll have that as sponsors soon.
Someday.
Thanks so much for joining us. You guys take care.
Yeah, we'll be back with you guys next week. Scott, thank you so much. I'm gonna get this posted very soon.
I had a blast.
You've dialed in.
To Bucks and Brews, you might hear something
You can use.
like tips on your cash or tips on the suds.
You're gonna want to
The
use.
smarts of these
Because
stuff.
they know the brews.
And they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks.
So listen up, because shit's not funny.
And save yourself some
Beer money. Bucks.
and brews.
Bucks and
Bucks
Brews.
and brews.
Brews.
Bucks and Brews.